going on, guys? I just kind of wanted to do a kind of a wrap up on what I thought about the Brewer's Edge here. I've done I think this will be my 4th beer on the Brewer's Edge, so I just kind of want to give final thoughts on things that I like, things that I don't like about it. First off, I'll just say it, I really do like it. For what it is, it's really great. You know, it's probably the easiest way to get into all grain. Like if you're, even if it's kicking on right now, but if you know, even if you're kind of like extract or something, you want to get into all grain, you don't have a lot of space, this is really what it's for. I got it because of I don't really like to brew in you know, I'm brewing in the garage, so in the summertime it's hot in Colorado, relatively speaking. In the wintertime it's cold, relatively speaking. So there's only like 4 months where it's really nice out, or 4 or 5 months. So that was kind of my reason for getting it. But I'll go over some of the pros. The first thing, a pro, is the cost. These things retail at $300. You're going to be pretty hard pressed to get into all grain, to get an 8-gallon pot, a burner, mash tun, fittings, I mean all that stuff. It's going to be probably over $300. I haven't priced it, but you're going to be pretty close. So the cost on this thing is phenomenal. One of the downsides about the cost on this thing is it doesn't come with a wort chiller or a pump. I've got my pump hooked up for the first time, so you don't need a pump. I've done 3 brews, or I brewed with this 3 times without a pump, and I haven't had a problem. The main reason I'm using a pump is for recirculating, or doing like is for cooling, to get like a whirlpool going, so the cooling takes longer. And that's another con, is if you don't have a pump. I mean, I'm sure you guys probably can guess, just with your immersion chiller, depending on groundwater temps, just stirring it around for 15 minutes sucks. So that's the main reason. And I also try to recirculate the mash a little bit. So one of the really major pros that I really like about some of the features on this thing is that it has like not an early start, but a timed start. So what I've done, what I always do is I fill this thing up with water the night before. I have it set to turn on an hour before I wake up to brew, and then when I wake up, it's already up to temperature. So I literally wake up, I have my grains already crushed from the night before. I just throw them in and we're mashing. So literally minute 1, I'm already brewing, and so that's quite a time saver. One of the cons that's not a time saver are the heat times on this thing. It's slow to heat up. I wouldn't say it's the unit's fault. Just the fact that you're running off 120 volts. It's just going to take longer. So I wouldn't really say that's a con of the unit, just the con of 120 volt system. So it'll take 40 minutes once I pull the grains out to come up to a boil. So it'll take at least 35-40 minutes to go from 150 degrees to 212. So that's so you kind of lose a little bit of time there, but you gain it already having the strike water heated up. One of the cons about just the unit and the way that it's set up is that the controls, you can't really see, but I'm sure you've seen it before. The controls are on the bottom, and so like if you want to make an adjustment, you have to like get on all fours and like look like that. It's a minor thing, not a huge deal, but I mean if you have bad knees or bad back or something like that, that could be kind of an issue where like the grain father has the controls at the top and you can look at it. One of the other pros that I really like about it is just the ease of cleanup. One of the things that I've kind of gotten into in my system in the garage is like I've got more things. I've got a plate chiller. I've got all these different things. The cleanup has taken. Every time I add something to that system, it's like another 5 minutes of cleanup. So The nice thing about this is you just pull the grains out, you dump them into a sack, and that's pretty much the cleanup. The cleanup's really easy, especially when I have a sink right next to me. But just like, yeah, the cleanup, just the whole simplicity of the thing has really been nice. I mean, I don't have to worry about fly sparging and, you know, all this other stuff. It's just, it's simple. One of the cons that is nice about other systems like the Grainfather is they have, you know, the Wi-Fi controls, and you can really just kind of sit back on your couch and monitor things. This doesn't have it. Again, it's only $300, so I don't really consider it. I would rather not have it and not pay the money. Let's just say that. But that could be a con, is if you kind of like the being connected and Wi-Fi and all that stuff. The no pump is a con. Again, it's a cost saving thing. There's other units that have pumps built in. For me, I've brewed I've been around when people are brewing on the Grainfather, and I don't know if they need to clean the pump out better, if it was kind of getting stuck, but it would clog up quite a bit. So like when he was doing the mash, like grain would get stopped in there and get clogged up, and like he just ended up fooling with it more than I thought the pump was worth. So the one, I think it's kind of a plus that this thing doesn't have a pump. For me, I already have a pump, and this, you know, it's a chugger pump, so it'll pump. It never gets clogged up. You know, you could run rocks through it, and it just keeps pumping. So for me, that's kind of a plus. And that, you know, and the Grainfather might not clog up for other people. You know, you might have to just serve. You know, you might have to just clean it every once in a while. You know, hops might get in there or something like that. But you know, it is what it is. You know, if you buy a separate pump, I feel that it probably works a little bit better. But it's not an all-in-one system. Now, one bad thing about using my pump is, you know, I've got all this stuff kind of hanging out, and now I'm kind of getting into a complication again. So, you know, it's when I disconnect the pump, wart's gonna fall on the ground. You know, so it's like there's more cleanup. So. It does do a decent boil too, is one of the pros on this unit. Like on the Grainfather, I felt like this thing does a better boil than the Grainfather. Now, given I haven't done a side by side, stuff like that, this is a 1600 watt heating element, and I think the Grainfathers are 1500 watts. 100 watts doesn't seem like a lot, but I think it is once you're kind of at that critical mass of volume versus power of the 120 volt system. This is probably, I mean, you can't really boil more than like 7.5, 8 gallons on it. And that's a pro too. This is like an 8-gallon pot. I mean, the markings go up to 7.5, and then you still have, you know, that much space. So the volume on this thing is really nice. That's, you know, if you're doing boiling 6.5 gallons, that's going to be really, you know, you're going to have 2.5 gallons of headspace. That's nice. I have some other videos on how the system works and holds temperatures and stuff like that. So if you're kind of wondering how does this thing hold temperatures, or how does it maintain grain temps, or how long, you know, could you do a step mash in it, I've got other videos explaining in detail how long it takes to, you know, to heat up, you know, just, you know, just to heat up water. And I have, you know, I timed every, like, you know, 10 minutes I came back and took a temperature. So that'll give you a really good idea of how long this thing just takes to heat up. So just look at my other videos for that. Yeah, all in all, the thing's great. It's got, it's just really easy to use is the thing. The only thing I don't like about mashing in it, and this is why I have the grain bag in it, is on the bottom, you know, there's holes, so it's there's holes, and so grain, you know, when you mash in, seeps through that until it develops a grain bed. And so what had been happening is grain was getting, you know, out of the grain pipe, you know, and it was getting kind of into the wort. So what I would do to combat that is I would just, you know, kind of do like a Vorloff, really. But I didn't really feel like I was getting all of the grains out of the wort to a really clear wort. So it didn't really bother me too much. But some people would. Some people really like having a clean, clear wort to start their boil, and they don't want any grains or any husks in it at all. And that's kind of a downside of brewing the bag, I think. It's just you're just going to get kind of a cloudier wort or a cloudier boil. But I don't really think it affects the end product of the beer that much. One thing that, recirculating with this pump, it did clear it up quite a bit. I can tell that there's no real grain husk, and using a really thin bag like this in conjunction, in conjunction with the stovepipe really seems to, I think it's going to really, help filter out all the grains. So, yeah, that's about it. If you already, the one nice thing about this thing is the cost point, I think, is it wasn't $1,000. $1,000 was just, I wasn't going to spend $1,000 to be able to brew inside and still have an outside brewery. But for $300, all right, I'll do it for the convenience of being able to brew inside. And yeah, it's worked out great. I'd buy it again in a heartbeat. Again, there's other costs. You still have to get a chiller, immersion chiller. So you can make one of those for $50-ish, and a pump is optional. So there's other systems that actually, I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of the system. It's like $500 or $450 or something like that, and it comes with an immersion chiller, and I believe it has a pump built in already. It's kind of like the cheap Grain Father. So, and those look pretty nice too. But for me, I already had the immersion chiller, already have a pump. This thing was perfect. Brewer's Edge, mash and boil. I really highly recommend them. I mean, you just can't go wrong. It hasn't broke on me yet, so as long as this thing keeps running, I'm going to be happy. Yeah, it holds temperature great. The grain temp, like, literally doesn't move. I'll just say this real fast. It was one of the things that I was really concerned about, was how does it hold grain temperature without recirculating the mash. Basically, and I've explained this on the other videos as well that I've done, but there's an inch of wort all the way around your mash pipe. And what it does is, once you mix in your grain and that temperature is established inside the mash pipe, the outside temperature is almost like just a, it's just a, not a cooler, but a insulator. The liquid on the outside insulates the mash pipe, and it does it really good. The temperature on the outside fluctuates a little bit, 5 or 6 degrees, it'll fluctuate, but the inside temperature never gets too hot or too cold. So it really, this thing holds temperatures for an hour just spot on. So there's that. So yeah, if you're looking at doing step mashing, maybe a little bit more difficult to do. You're gonna have to get a pump. I don't know how well it does step mashing. I've never really done step mashing, so can't comment there. But as far as holding a single infusion mash, this thing, you just have to trust me, it works extremely, extremely well. And the cool thing is, this thing will hold a single infusion mash indefinitely. It'll never drop temperature, because it regulates the temperature, the insulating liquid on the outside of the mash pipe. It never lets the grain, it just keeps the insulating temperature at a steady degree, so you'll never really lose temperature. As far as I've done an hour-and-a-half mash and never lost a degree, really. So, alright guys, thanks for watching. If you're thinking about buying one, I totally would. So for some people, the Grain Father does make more sense. It's all-in-one, easier to store, easier to see. It has Wi-Fi. This thing's much more basic, but for me, it's what I was looking for, especially with the cost. So, alright guys, see ya.